Welcome to Permission to Breathe, a transformative podcast dedicated to providing a safe space where you can inhale deeply and exhale freely while embracing your grief journey unapologetically. I am your host, Dr. T.I.M, a spiritual practitioner, grief advocate and educator, author, and your guide on this journey through grief. This space was born out of the understanding that grief is not just an event, it's a lifelong unfolding. It's layered, it's complex, and often it's silence. And here is where we disrupt the silence. We will talk about the grief that lingers after the food stops arriving at your door, the grief that remains when no one calls and no one comes by to check on you, the grief that's complicated, the grief that's ancestral, the grief that lives in your body long before it ever reaches your tears. Every episode, we honor the humanity of grief, the anger, the confusion, the numbness, the longing, and we do so without apology. Whether you're navigating fresh loss, unspoken sorrow, or the weight of a world that just won't pause, this podcast invites you to sit down, breathe deeply, and give yourself the permission you've been waiting for to grieve, to feel, to breathe. Let's begin. Today's episode is sponsored by Let the Church Grieve by Dr. T.I.M, a compelling book that explores the often overlooked subject of grief within spiritual communities. Dr. Isaac combines personal antidotes with theological insights, providing a compassionate framework for understanding and addressing grief collectively. This book emphasizes the need for spiritual leaders to create safe spaces for mourning and guides congregations through the grieving process with faith and empathy. It's a must-read for anyone looking to support those experiencing grief within their spiritual communities. Grab your copy of Let the Church Grieve at www.drtamiisaac.com today and begin the journey towards healing and growth. Last week, we spent time talking about the heart, not just the organ that keeps us alive, but the place where memory, attachment, and longing and grief live together. The heart that holds joy and sorrow in the same space. Today, I want to talk about love, not the romanticized version, not the easy or effortless kind, but love after loss. Love that has been interrupted, love that has been taken away, love that once felt safe and now feels complicated. For some of you listening, love might be something you miss deeply. For others, it might feel distant or even risky. You may want connection and closeness while also feeling your body's hesitation. You may feel drawn toward love and afraid of it all at the same time. Love after loss often arrives quietly. It does not always come with excitement or confidence. Sometimes it comes as a question. Sometimes it shows up as curiosity mixed with caution. And sometimes it feels like standing at the edge of something meaningful and wondering if you can step forward without falling apart. If you feel guarded, unsafe, or slow to trust, there's nothing wrong with you. That is not a flaw in your heart. It is evidence that your heart remembers. You remember what it cost to love before. You remember what it felt like to lose, and your body has learned to pause before opening up again. This episode, I want you to know, is for anyone who is finding themselves drawn toward love again, even if they are not sure what that means yet. It is for those who want connection but are afraid of what it might take for them. It is for those who are learning how to be with someone new while still carrying the imprint of someone or something they lost. This is not a conversation about pushing yourself forward or proving that you are healed. It is not about timelines, milestones, or expectations. It's simply about telling the truth about what love feels like now and making space for that truth without judgment. Wherever you are on your journey with love, you are welcome here. So take a breath. Let your shoulders soften and know that you do not have to decide anything today. You only have to be present. Let's talk about what it means to love again while carrying the fear of loss. Grief changes the way we love because it changes the way we attach. Before loss, love often moves through us with ease. We reach without thinking, we trust without checking, we open without measuring the cost because love feels natural, even when it's imperfect. And after loss, love carries memories. The body remembers what it feels like to lose someone who mattered. The mind remembers the moment when life shifted, and the heart learns that what feels secure today can be gone tomorrow. So love slows down. You may notice yourself paying closer attention, listening for tone shifts, watching patterns, needing reassurance where you once felt steady. You may even hesitate before sharing your full story or your full heart. And parts of you that once showed up freely now pause, waiting to see if it's safe. And this does not mean you have stopped believing in love. It just simply means your system has learned something important. Trust is often one of the first things grief touches, not because you have become cynical or closed off, but because trust now carries history. Your nervous system remembers the shock of loss, the ache of absence, the way love once ended without consent. So trust becomes caution. It asks more questions. It moves more slowly. It wants proof before permission. And many people interpret this shift as something being wrong with them. They wonder why love feels harder, why excitement is mixed with fear, and why joy feels fragile. But what is happening is not damage, it is adaptation. Your heart learned that love is meaningful. And because it is meaningful, it learned how to protect itself. Openness often gives way to protection. Vulnerability is replaced with vigilance. And not because you no longer want connection, but because connection once cost you something real. Protection can look like emotional restraint. It can look like needing control. It can look like keeping options open or staying guarded. It can even look like telling yourself you're better off alone. These responses are not signs of failure. They are signs of survival. Your heart did not stop loving. It simply learned how to love with awareness. The question is not whether this change is good or bad. The question is how to hold it with care, how to recognize that the part of you that hesitates is also the part of you that remembers how deeply you can love. Grief does not erase your capacity for connection. It reshapes it. And learning how you love now is part of learning who you are becoming. One of the most lasting effects of grief is not sadness, it's anticipation. After loss, many people live with a quiet expectation that something else will be taken. Even when life begins to feel stable again, even when love starts to reappear, there can be a persistent sense of waiting for the other moment, waiting for the next phone call, the shift in tones, the diagnosis, the goodbye. Grief teaches the body that loss can arrive without warning. So the body stays alert or on guard. This is why fear often follows love after loss, not because love is unwanted, but because love now feels tied to risk. Loving again can feel like standing on ground that once gave way. You may notice yourself becoming hyper aware, watching health more closely, paying attention to changes in mood or behavior, feeling uneasy when things feel calm because calm no longer feels permanent. For some, joy itself self becomes frightening. There is a quiet thought that says, if I let myself feel this happy, the fall will hurt even more. So joy tends to be held back. It is measured and it is managed. And this is not pessimism. It simply is just protection. The body remembers how it feels when joy turned into grief, when love became absence, and when life divided into before and after. Fear of another loss often lives in the body long before it shows up in words. It shows up as tight shoulders, clenched jaws, a shallow breath, I'm sorry, and difficulty relaxing into closeness, a need to stay mentally prepared. It's the being on alert. The vigilance becomes a way of coping. Staying alert feels safer than being surprised again. And yet, living this way is exhausting. Holding love and fear at the same time can feel like constantly bracing, wanting connection while also scanning for danger, longing for closeness while keeping an emotional exit nearby. Many people feel ashamed of fear. They will tell themselves they should be over it by now, that love should feel lighter, that being afraid means they're not healed. But fear after loss does not mean you're broken. It doesn't mean that you're not healed. It means your system learned from the experience that it had. And loss taught your body that attachment carries pain. So your body tries to keep you from being hurt again. The work is not to eliminate fear. The work is to understand it, to recognize that fear is not the opposite of love. Often it is love remembering. Fear says this mattered before. Fear says I survived something hard. Fear says I do not want to lose again. Now, when we listen to fear instead of fighting it, it softens. It becomes information instead of a barrier. And you are allowed to acknowledge fear without letting it decide everything for you. You are allowed to move slowly. You are allowed to say, I want love and I am afraid, because both can be true. Loving again after loss is not about pretending loss will not happen. It is about learning how to live with uncertainty without closing your heart entirely. And that is a tender, brave human experience. After loss, many people talk about having walls up, but often what they really have are layers of protection that once made sense. There is an important difference between healthy boundaries and emotional shutdown, even though from the outside they can look very much similar. Boundaries are about care. They help us stay connected without losing ourselves. They allow closeness while honoring limits, pace, and capacity. Boundaries say, this is where I end and you begin, and we can still meet here. Emotional shutdown now is different. Okay. It is not about clarity. It's really only about survival. It's about keeping pain out by keeping everything at a distance. Now, after grief, protection often becomes automatic. Some people protect themselves by staying emotionally reserved. They share less, they feel less, they keep conversations light or surface level. Others protect themselves by over managing relationships, controlling situations, or needing constant reassurance. Some avoid closeness altogether, telling themselves they are better off, alone. None of these responses come from a lack of desire for love. They come from a memory of what it felt like to lose something precious. Protection says things like, I can't afford to be caught off guard again, or I need to stay in control to feel safe, or I will keep my heart closed so it cannot be taken. These strategies do often work, at least for a while now. They reduce exposure, they create distance from pain, and they offer a sense of stability where everything once felt uncertain, right? But protection also has a cost. Over time, it can limit emotional closeness, and it can make relationships feel distant, strained, and unsatisfying. It can keep others from truly knowing you, and it can keep you from fully knowing yourself in connection with somebody else. This is why it can be helpful to ask gently, not critically, what protection has cost you. Not what it has saved you from, but what it may have limited emotionally or relationally. Has it made it harder to feel understood? Has it kept joy muted or restrained? Has it created loneliness even in the presence of others? These are not questions meant to pressure change. They are invitations to awareness. Understanding your protection does not mean you have to dismantle it right away. It means you begin to relate to it with compassion instead of frustration. Your guardedness is not a character flaw. It is a response to loss. It developed for a reason. And like all coping strategies, it deserves curiosity before correction. Now, as you listen today, you may begin to notice where your boundaries are supportive and where they may be doing more work than they need to. That noticing alone is very meaningful, okay? Love does not require you to drop all protection. It asks only for you to become aware of how you are protecting yourself and why. And from that place, you can begin to choose slowly and honestly what kind of closeness feels possible for you right now. When people think about loving again after loss, they often imagine something big, a leap, a decision, a moment where fear disappears and certainty arrives. But love rarely returns that way after grief. More often, it returns quietly. It shows up as curiosity instead of confidence, as interest without clarity, as the willingness to stay present rather than the ability to commit. Loving again does not begin with certainty, it begins with honesty. Honesty about what you can offer right now, honesty about what feels tender now, honesty about what you are still carrying now. Small, honest love might look like allowing yourself to enjoy someone's company without deciding what it means. It might look like naming your fear instead of hiding it. It might look like staying present in a conversation instead of pulling away when it starts to really matter. You do not have to give your whole heart at once, and you are allowed to let love unfold in pieces. This is where pacing really matters. And pacing is not avoidance. It is listening. It is checking in with your body. It's noticing when something feels like too much and when it feels like just enough. Consent with yourself is essential. You get to ask, does this feel safe enough today? Not forever, but just today. Now, loving in small ways might begin with friendship, with shared laughter, with allowing someone to know you a little more than the last person did, with staying curious instead of guarded, right? So without the guardedness, you allow yourself to stay curious. Now, curiosity keeps the heart open without forcing it. It allows connection without pressure. It creates space for love to grow naturally at a speed that your nervous system can tolerate. Love after loss often asks for gentleness. I always tell people, be gentle with yourself, especially when they're going through grief. Not because you are fragile, but because you're aware. You have learned that love matters, that attachment leaves imprint. And so you move carefully, not because you are incapable, but because you are paying attention. There's nothing wrong with beginning again slowly. There is wisdom in letting love be simple at first and allowing connection to be built on truth instead of performance. Loving again does not require you to know how the story will end. It only asks that you stay honest about where you are in the story now. And sometimes that's just enough. The quiet burdens many people carry after loss is the pressure to be ready to move on, ready to date, ready to open their heart again, ready to look like they are doing better. This pressure can come from outside voices, well meaning comments or culture messages that suggest there's a right pace for healing and love, but often the strongest pressure comes from within. You may find yourself asking why you are not further along, why certain fears still surface, or why love does not feel as easy as it once did. Now, you got to know that comparison creeps in very quietly. You watch others move forward and wonder what is wrong with you, but measuring your progress against timelines that were never designed for your life or your loss is not helpful. But readiness is not a destination that you arrive at and stay in either. Readiness shifts. It moves with safety, experience, and capacity. Some days you may feel open and other days you may feel guarded. And that does not mean like that you are moving backwards. It means that you're human, having a human experience. Grief, we know, is not linear, and neither is love after grief. There is no moment where fear disappears completely and certainty takes over. Waiting for that moment can keep you frozen. Instead of asking, am I ready for love? It can be more helpful to ask, what feels possible right now? Possibility allows room for fluctuation. It allows you to respond to your body instead of forcing a narrative. You do not owe anyone proof of progress. You do not need perform healing. You are not behind, right? The heart opens when it feels safe enough, not when it is pushed. Letting go of readiness means releasing the idea that love must look a certain way or happen on a certain schedule. It means allowing your heart to speak in its own time. And that permission alone can create space for something new to grow. Now, before we close this episode, I want to invite you into a moment of reflection. There is no need to answer these questions quickly or completely. You can take your time and sit with one or return, to them later, right? So you might ask yourself, what am I afraid of losing again? Not to judge the fear, but to understand it. Okay. The other question is, how has grief shaped the way I approach love now? And here's another one. What feels different in my body, in my expectations, in my pacing? And where might I allow a little more honesty or softness, right? Not a big opening, not a risk that feels overwhelming, just a small place where truth feels possible for you. And remember, you do not need to fix anything that comes up. It's just simply about awareness, and awareness is enough. Noticing is a form of care. Now, listen, if you are carrying fear alongside the desire to love, know that there is nothing wrong with you. Fear does not cancel out love. It does not disqualify you from connection. It simply means you have loved before and your heart remembers. You know, loving again after loss, it's not about erasing what you have been through. It is about learning how to carry it with you without letting it close your heart completely. There is no right way to do this. There is only your way. As we continue in this series, we will keep making space for truths grief bring into our relationships and our bodies and our sense of safety. But for now, I want you to be gentle with yourself. I want you to move at a pace that honors your history, your experience. Let love be honest before it is brave. And until next time, give yourself permission to breathe. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Permission to Breathe podcast. I want to invite you to sit with it just a little bit longer. Notice what came up, notice what feels heavy and what feels clear, and know that there is no rush to resolve any of it. You can also read the companion blog to this episode found on my website at www.drtammyisaac.com along with the show notes. If this conversation was helpful, you are welcome to share it with someone who may need it or leave a review so others can find their way here. And join me next Monday for a new episode of the Permission to Breathe podcast. And as always, take care of yourself gently. And until next time, give yourself permission